we are very happy to welcome on board with us Dr. Alok Chopra, who's co-founder of Ashlok Hospital. And he's one of the most highly sought after medical authorities in the country, being a specialist in heart diseases and owing to his integrated approach towards medicine that also brings in a range of comprehensive therapies, including therapies of energy, healing, acupuncture, counseling, yoga, nutrition management. And as an even more delicious dimension to his personality, he is also a trained chef. So it's wonderful to have with us Dr. Chopra here. And we're also absolutely delighted to have on board with us his equally illustrious daughter, Isha Chopra, who's an acclaimed actor, model, writer, and an orator. And she's also an alumnus of the acclaimed Parsons School of Design, New York City, and holds several filmmaking and acting diplomas from the London Film Academy. And she's, of course, one of the most highly sought after influencers in the lifestyle sphere in the country. Hi, Isha. Hi, Dr. Chopra.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
It's absolutely our pleasure. So it's absolutely fantastic having two committed individuals in the same family who are equally committed to well-being and wellness and nutrition. So tell us, what does wellness mean to you, to both of you?
I think for me, wellness has always sort of referred a little bit more to aligning with your authentic self. So whether and I don't I don't restrict that definition to just your food or your lifestyle or your exercise or things like that. I mean, I take it to your relationships, to how you dress or how your style works or how you travel, anything. So I think that for me it is, because everyone's bodies are also different, everyone's minds work differently. So I think that it's comes with a certain awareness of who you are, what works for you, what's right for you, and then you basically, like, this is who you're supposed to be, and you basically come closer and closer to that. So to me, that is wellness. Like when you feel well is when you are most like yourself. So I don't have the same knowledge, of course, as my father does on food and nutrition and things like that. But I think I have done many years of meditation and sort of study to just understand who am I, and how can I work to just aligning my own life with who I am as much as possible.
Fantastic. I think that encapsulates it pretty well. Dr. Chopra, can we have your comments on wellness? What does wellness mean to you?
Wellness, like the word wellness and holistic are actually, in my dictionary, very flocked to death, overused words. And if you ask 100 people, they'll give you different answers. So,
Right.
rather than, go about that, I would rather look at wellness and wholeness as something which looks into all the gamuts of human existence, which is your body, your psycho-spiritual self, your interpersonal life, and how you present yourself to the world. And this is like, okay, let's put it in a quadrant. The upper two quadrants, that is the body and the psycho-spiritual self, is our inner problems, inner situations. The
Right.
interpersonal life and our worldly life is open to the world. So if we put this all together, it will address not just the body, but our psycho-spiritual self, our how we deal with the world, and how we are with ourselves and the people around us. Say, for example, we have an evolutionary status. For example, the body mind, and then the conscious mind. In the psycho-spiritual self, it's the reactive mind, then the focused mind, and finally unity consciousness. In the interpersonal life, it's me, you, us, all of us. In the worldly self, it is a creative struggle. Then we build up to generativity and mentorship. So when we put
Right.
this all together, we are really whole. And we have many lines of development over and over it. So therefore, basically something which looks at every aspect of our life and at the same time is evolutionary to reach wholeness in all of those four spectrums. That's holistic wellness.
Great. So if we were to decode that in a layperson's lingo and actually talk about the rather crowded dietscape, which is rather prevalent in urban living these days, what are the common myths about, say, intermittent fasting that seems to be ranking very high on the popularity index at the moment?
So everybody has done something, and in the end, it has come down to a very cheap method. They are using wrong food which is not really holistic, food which is is stung with all the pesticides in the packaged food. So nobody is doing it correctly. That is my first point. That let us first understand what is fasting, why is it important, and why are we doing it in the first place. First of all, it echoes our evolutionary past. Why is that important? Because our DNA and our genetic code has not changed for 30,000 years. So we are stuck with certain aspects of our ancestors. Now, if you take the day in the life of our ancestors, they used to wake up in the morning, do a sprint, run away from a wild animal, go to pick up some stones and sticks, pick up their children. So all the time they were not walking for long periods of time. They were doing a sprint activity and a weight activity from morning to evening. So they worked up a big appetite, so they deserved a big meal. So the first lesson is that the first meal is your biggest meal. And lastly, the distribution of your macronutrients is very important. In those times, there was no grains, there was no rice, there was no dairy. And everybody thought they were carnivores. They weren't, because animals were eating them up.
What is been your biggest takeaway, Isha, and how have you imbibed it in your daily intake?
Okay. So the thing is that for me, I'll be honest, it also started as a weight loss thing because quite frankly, like I'm not the most disciplined exerciser, and I wanted to maintain my body to whatever
Right.
extent I could.
Right.
Now, what happens? What what my biggest takeaway was what you spoke about this being an evolutionary thing. I assumed I had learned a little bit. First, I understood it as a weight loss thing. Then I understood it as something that, okay, this is like I understood the certain things that happen to your body, and your body goes into ketosis and this and that, and it starts burning fat and fuel. I understood those things. When I first spoke to him at length, and I understood that this is actually about the way our ancestors were, like when we were cavemen, because we had to hunt and find food, and they used to go for long periods without eating, and that's how the actual genetics of the human body worked. And when I heard
Right.
that actually kind of really spoke to me, because then I understood that this is what your body wants. Most of the time, what
Right.
happens when we find, and I mean, I won't come from very high flung ideas. I can't speak so scientifically about it. But as a person, the more awareness that I developed about my body, I realized that, okay, my body does not like bread. Do I eat bread still? Yes. But, I mean, like, I'm not going to give up pizza. But I realized that, okay, that my body does not like bread. It does not like lactose. It does not like certain things. So at least like when I'm having it, it is my choice. And I have to take responsibility for what I'm doing at that moment.
Right.
So for me to understand that this is what your body actually wants to do, this is physically, your body asking you that I would like to exist in a certain way. Can you help me do that best? And that to
Right.
me as a story works a lot better than I want to lose a few kilos, you know. Because the thing is that you can become thin, but I've seen many thin people who are extremely unhealthy, they're extremely unhappy. So I think
Right.
when you actually, work a certain way, that you're like, okay, my body is happy. My body, for example, does not want to be skinny. I know that.
Right.
It does not want to be sticks and bones. I mean, do I look good like that?
Right.
Yes, because now what's happened is that in culture, we've understood that girls need to be skinny to look good. But am I
Right.
ever happy in that moment? No. I've been miserable. I've been depressed. I mean, every time I'm not eating correctly, or I'm not following what my actual body wants me to do, I'm not happy. And everything else goes for a toss as well. So my biggest takeaway is to understand that this is how you will be your optimum best. Your creativity will be good. Your writing will be better. Your acting will be better. Your relationships will be better. So I think my takeaway was that whole, that you are what you eat. And if you're giving yourself something that you need and that's good for you, that is going to be your output as well.
No, I think it's absolutely commendable and extremely candid, given the fact that you're a part of the glamour industry as well, where a lot of these perspectives are heightened and, of course, promoted pretty aggressively. So I think it's very important, and it's absolutely fantastic that you're speaking your mind and right,
So the dream that's being sold is actually a little bit of a nightmare, if you ask me. I really
right,
love my craft, and it's
right,
important for me that I use that craft to actually contribute to the world. But what we
right,
often do in the glamour industry is that the people in the industry are miserable. The people who are looking at those people are assuming that their lives are better, and then they are miserable. So we're just perpetuating a lot of misery, you know. I think if we just sort of found ways to just be happier with who we are and just be those authentic selves, then it's much it's going to be better for everyone.
Absolutely, but you know what? The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, and with social media having gained such mammoth proportions, over the past few years, I actually wanted to ask you. You have such a fantastic following on Instagram. What do you think is your responsibility as a celebrated individual, as um, a very important personality in the social media space? Because you do have very many eyes on you all the time, and people do tend to ape whatever you're doing.
So see, I'm not aware of what people are doing and how they're receiving that, and that is up to them how they would like to actually receive that information. But I think your only
Right.
responsibility as an individual is to be honest. You know, now it is not up to anyone who is in any kind of a public eye, no matter how big or small of a celebrity or whatever that they are. They don't have to.
Right.
I don't talk about everything that goes on in my life. I only talk about the things
Right.
that I talk about. I
Right.
only reveal the sides of my life or my personality that I'm interested in having people know. And I don't think
Sure.
I have a responsibility to tell you everything about my life, by that logic.
Right.
But I think
Right.
it is important to just sort of think that, okay, that what do I care about? What do I believe in? And am I perpetuating that? Having the thing is, the problem is that also, like, an Instagram following has become the validation that people assume, right? That,
Right.
oh, if you have an Instagram following, then you must be famous, or then you're
Right.
important. Or if your following is bigger than mine, that means that it doesn't mean that someone is a better actor or a worse actor. It just means that they're a better Instagrammer. I
Absolutely
can tell
true.
you there are
Absolutely.
many actors that I know, many of my peers who are much more talented than me, who are much more hardworking than me, but I'm just a better Instagrammer than them.
Right.
you know it's another skill. So all I think that what is important to me is that you represent yourself as close to who you are. And I think that's the only responsibility you have. After that, how can you sit and dictate what how people are going to receive you? There's so many people who don't believe in what I believe in, and I get
Absolutely.
trolled for it. I get trolled for a lot of things that I stand for as a woman, that do not fall into a place with a lot of conservative ideas and a lot of conventional beliefs. But I'm not going to change that voice. That's what I believe in. So if you're following me, it's your problem. That's the way I see it. So I think my only responsibility, or anyone's responsibility, is just honesty.
Right. Okay, great. So would you say that any diet is like a double-edged sword? Then, Dr. Chopra, you were elucidating the finer aspects of intermittent fasting before we got.
So, we're talking about indulgences. I'll come to your question in a bit. That I also do a lot of indulgences, but interestingly, the indulgences are very healthy, and people often accuse me of indulging myself in things which are healthy. Truly, I truly believe, because it makes my body feel better. Like Isha said, it makes my soul feel better. Yes, I was also a great pizza eater and all nonsense eater, but now I realize that this is it. And it's not just what we eat, it's what we digest, it's what we absorb, what we assimilate, and what we eliminate. So it's not just in the eating, it has to go at a much deeper level. I don't want to go into the medical side of it, but I want to make people aware that just having a particular food and just having it in an intermittent time is not enough. Okay, so that's coming to that. So now the distribution of your macronutrients. See, because our fat, we are primed to use fat as fuel. 60 to 70% and sometimes 50 to 60% of our diet has to be fat. That's a challenging task to have so much of fat, but the way I will explain it to you, it's not that bad. Overdoing proteins. Now, I want to make a big point on it. Overdoing proteins, especially after the age of 50, 60, is a real downer. And you can, you all remember Atkins. He had his heart in the right place. He knew that we need to eat fat to survive better. But he said, eat proteinaceous fat. And the people ate junk meats and junk beefs and chorizos and all the, nonsense meats and things like that. They eat so much of protein that ultimately the great Dr. Atkins died of a protein-induced kidney failure, and that is what we may be leading to your surprise. The amount of protein that we need to eat is not as much as we believe it is, because and there's a ways of measuring it. We do we take the person's weight, make a body composition analysis, percentage body weight, and then we calculate, and really turns out to be, for example, a quarter of a deck of cards is actually 6 grams of protein. So if you eat a whole deck, that is 24 grams, is just a deck of cards. So, a small little piece of chicken is already 24. That is what you are allowed in one meal. And we
Right.
shouldn't eat, women shouldn't eat more than 45, and men shouldn't eat more than 55. And coming
Right.
back to carbs, of course, there are two types of carbs. One are those net carbs, that means the carbs without fiber, and the carbs with fiber. When we do an intermittent fasting, we also combine it with this type of well formulated, high fat, moderate protein, and low carb diet, which is about 50 grams of carbs. So that is the distribution of the macronutrients. And I'll come to the diets of what we should eat. Now, what are the fats and what are the oils? First of all, I want to make a very big point about the oils which are liquid at room temperature. Everybody is having that, all these refined oils, your canola oil, flaxseed oil, the groundnut oil, soybean oil, everything is junk. Why is it junk? Because it is very high in omega 6. What are omega 6? There are three types: omega 3, omega 6, and omega 9. The ratio of omega 6 to omega 3, if it is high, it is a slow poisoning. It's a big slow poisoning. It is destroying your cells, it's destroying your mitochondria. You don't feel that inflammation. It's a low grade smoldering inflammation. So it's my earnest request that one of the biggest poisons that we have today are liquid oils. Liquid oils, what about olive oil, hemp oil, and avocado oil? They are not omega 6, they are omega 9. There are monosaturated fatty acids. They are wonderful, very powerful oils, but if you give them the same treatment, that means if you cook with them, fry with them, they're gone. And
Right.
then and someone has given us this promise, uh, uh, refined olive oil, which is really, really junk. And please, my earnest request, please throw it out of the window. So what you are left with is ghee and white butter from grass-fed A2 cows. You have the coconut oil. You have the cold-pressed extra virgin mustard oil. These are the four oils which resonate with the Indian DNA. Yes, for a
Right.
little while you can have your rice bran and your sesame oil once in a while, but please make sure that your main oil should be there. Similarly, we have to have organic proteins. Do we eat enough meats? The problem with meats is not so much the meats than the quality of the meats, the mercury in the fish, the steroids and the antibiotics in the mutton and the chicken. That is our biggest problem. So
Right.
the foods have to be very carefully monitored. Nuts and seeds have a lot of proteins, but again, just because nuts and seeds are supposed to be great, we are overdoing them, and there are problems to it. And if time permits, I can give you details of each nut and seed so that you can know what to do and what not to do. And finally, the good carbs, which include the bad carbs, are of course wheat, barley, semolina, sago, and corn, which are really not to be had at all. The ancient carbs like the jawar, bajra, ragi, amaranth, quinoa, buckwheat, besan, these are your good
Right.
carbs. But they are still carbs. So when you are transitioning from carb burning to fat burning, because when we do the intermittent fasting, we do a high fat, medium protein, low carb. And that's the time when we are transitioning, we have to also stop these carbs just for a little while and then gradually integrate it back into your system so that your body has learned to burn fat as fuel. Once that is done, it'll take care of it. That's the way. I mean, if you want more details, you can ask me specific questions, but roughly speaking, this is the way it should be done.
So, can you dwell a little bit on the window in between the meals that one is
Yeah.
supposed to bring in?
Okay, so the most popular window is 16:8, and again that's become a fact, but the fact is that it is true. The fat burning will start at around 8 hours, and around 12 hours it is peaking, and 16 hours is the right time to do the stop the fast. So you have a 8-hour eating window and a 16-hour non-eating window. Now, the easy way to do it is not start from the beginning. You first make a point to keep 3 to 4 hours between your last meal and sleep. So let's say it
Right.
comes to around 7 or 6:30 or 7. That way you can start an early meal. See, a lot of people fret about waiting till 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2 p.m. to start their first meal. But at times
Right.
it's a logistic issue. But if you can eat early, you can also eat a late breakfast and an early dinner. I mean, I don't like using the words breakfast and dinner, but first meal and second meal, you can say and start finish by 7 and start at 10, 9, 10, 11. So that is becomes very easy. You can finish your first meal and go to work. So that is the as far as the timing is concerned. Can we stick with the same timing every day? In the beginning, yes, you have to adjust to social needs, family needs, office needs. So you can transition different times, keep the window same, but over time, it becomes when it becomes like a religious ritual, it's better to stick with the same food. But naturally, of course, our life is such that we cannot always stick with. But if it does happen, we try and compensate for it. A friend calls me for dinner, I'm not going to say I've had dinner and come. I will not do my own thing. I will eat with my friend, but I will do a 1 day fast the next day, which means if I eat at 11, I will eat at 7 next day, which is 18 to 20 hours. So I will always compensate for it.
So
So
basically,
do
you make up for the lost time.
absolutely, absolutely.
So do you find this doable, plan, Isha? Have you practiced this in earnest?
Yes, I actually have. So I think the first time that you do intermittent fasting, what happens is that it's a shock to your system. And I remember
Right,
in the first week or 2 weeks, I was feeling quite here and there. I would feel a little dizzy. I would be a little cranky, but it's just habit. And now the thing is that I don't do it every day. There are moments where I say, when I'm traveling, I don't want to bother with certain things. But now my
right,
body has no problem adjusting to it whenever I go back to it. So if I fall off the bandwagon, it's very easy for me to come back. I can go long hours without eating. Most importantly, what I realized is that we also, a lot of us eat out of boredom, you know. So
Or
it
right,
kind of cuts that out, because you have so much awareness of, like, does your body need food right now? Are you actually hungry? Are you being greedy, or are you bored? So hunger, boredom, and greed are very different reasons to eat. The only
right.
correct one is hunger, I guess, so I think, and yeah, I mean, I do see I actually literally shed weight every time I do fasting. And I believe that I don't become skinny or size zero. I just become my natural correct body, which is, in that case, then I know that I'm doing something right. But I find it very easy to do, because now my body is habituated. So even if I get off it for a while, it's very easy to come back. This is hard for us to compute. Like, what? Like, 16 ghante ke liye khana nahi khayenge? How is that possible? But we've just been raised on a culture of just stuffing our face all the time. So I think it's
Absolutely. So I guess when the body establishes that rhythm, as you said very clearly, you're able to slide back
I'm going
into
to say
that.
the rhythm comes, honestly, I'm going to say that, and see, I am the lay person on this panel right now talking about this. Um, Rhythm is the next step as far as I'm concerned. The first thing is just overcoming the shock of not eating for that long,
Okay.
right? That's something the body has to get used to, which is actually what the body wants, but we've been feeding it very differently.
okay.
Right.
See, it's a
So,
machine, right? It's like if you keep your AC on for 24 hours, it stops working. And then you have to go
right.
get someone to come and fix it. So we are also just a machine.
Mm.
So
So
what
it's
is
just as
your
simple as that.
mantra
We need a
for
break.
absolutely? So what is your mantra for clean eating then? Like moving forward, what is that one plan that in keeping with the requirements of your own personal biology, your own lifestyle, your own demands? What is your self-devised mantra for clean eating, like moving forward? What is it that you follow?
So,
What is your
so I have a certain ritual in the morning that I follow, which after just many trials and tests, I have realized is right for me.
okay?
So I usually start my day with just like hot water, which I think is a great way to flush out your system. So actually, I start my day with oil pulling, which is a different story, but that's not going inside my system. And then I have hot water and some lemon and some haldi. After that, I follow it. I usually have a spoon of ghee, because to sort of follow up with the haldi. And then I have my usual, like, coffee or eggs or whatever I want to have. I make sure I have one green juice in the day, because in case I don't get that through the day, I'll try and just have a green juice at home, or I'll try to order it when I'm out. I find that certain foods, you have to, I think, just observe how you feel after certain foods. Like, for example, I have a really very, very strong sweet tooth. It's something that I've not been able to conquer. But I find that, or say with meat, like when I'm not eating meat, I find myself less anxious. When I'm not having sugar, I find that I'm a little bit calmer. So there are certain things that in my space, my emotions kind of go a little haywire with certain foods.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, I know that, like, gluten and dairy are not preferred by my body. Sugar, unfortunately, I just love it, but I know that I do not feel good after, before, and that's just not guilt. It's just also about just emotionally hyper. Um, So I think that as long as you keep it within the window, you don't use. The other thing is that to not use that window as a reason to just stuff your face all the time.
Right.
But that's the thing. I drink a lot of water. Water really works. It's, I think, the most underrated. Um, it's the most underrated technique that we actually have. I drink water all the time.
Okay. With so many variants with infused water and a lot of marketing gimmicks with like black water coming in. You
Go
think the
for it.
good
I
old
mean,
natural water?
but why not? Why not? I mean, maze karo, like as in, why not? What's the problem? As long as you're having it,
Mazikar.
One thing
you feel
coming
like
up.
paying
Yes,
for it, go
absolutely.
for it. Like,
Dr. Chopra, what is your opinion on this? What is your mantra for clean eating moving forward?
Well, clean eating is first of all, don't indiscriminately pick up everything. I made it a
Right,
mantra not to buy or get anything which comes in a packet. I mean, I can never trust it. Like you never trust some aspects of the press or medical information, all the internet
right,
echo chambers, the hyperbolic headlines, the celebrities touting things like that. So I've made the point never to listen to that because I know the science behind it. So healthy eating means eating good fats first. Now I'll tell you what I do in the morning. I don't have any fat till my first meal because that will break my fast. But when your body is well adapted, you can do that. Like Isha said, she had a teaspoon of ghee. Technically, it does break your fast, but it does not break the fat burning mode. So when you are used to it, even if you are doing it, off and on, it's okay. So I start my meal with a bullet coffee, which is taking organic coffee and putting a teaspoon of ginger, a little bit of cinnamon, and some oil, whether it's olive oil or butter or coconut oil. And that's my first fat bomb. Then I have a soup. I've had a habit to have soup both meals. So opportunity A, I love soups. B, it gives me a great opportunity to put fat. Then it's my salads. Salads again we drizzle with fat. Then we steam our vegetables, put them in an air fryer, not because I want less fat, I want less heat, because heat destroys vegetables. Again, I drizzle them
right,
with either olive oil, hemp oil, or avocado oil. Then before my dinner time, I can even have a small fat bomb, which is like coconut cream, fully whipped cream, raw cocoa, one or two raw eggs, blueberries, and put some spinach and seeds in it, and it's a damn good meal. Sometimes I don't eat dinner because of that, but a small one compared to dinner is good. So as you can see, I have found very novel ways of introducing fat, and I really enjoy it. And I'm not fat at all. And so that is one thing which I tell my patients. I make them write 100 lines that fat does not make me fat. Fat is made from carbs, and I mean it. I actually make them write that because they never believe me. It's not easy to believe that this guy is eating 60, 70% fat and still surviving. So that is one good thing. So neat, clean oils, which I mentioned. Proteins, neat, clean, again, organic as far as possible. But
right.
over marinate and undercook your meats. Find the free range chickens, free range eggs, and the fish. You have to be careful about the mercury because mercury is a big,
Okay.
big. One thing
Yes.
about eggs, I want to say, eggs has been a big, 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 problem. Worrying about cholesterol. The truth is that cholesterol is not the killer in your life. It is the LDL particle which carries the cholesterol. And funnily, people don't even know. They call it LDL is the bad cholesterol and HDL is the good cholesterol. What if I tell you that HDL and LDL are not cholesterols? They are carrying a substance called cholesterol. And there are 5 or 6 major uses of cholesterol in the body. God wouldn't have made cholesterol if it was 80% of, by the way, 80% of the cholesterol measured in your blood is made by the liver. Why would the body make cholesterol if it's not needed? All your body
Right.
functions, your hormones, your cell membranes, your gray matter, everything is made by gut. So let's get out of that myth first. So eggs, the problem is that when you overheat an egg, overcook the egg, the white and the yellow become oxidized, and that is not good for us. So either have a
Okay.
raw egg smoothie, which I do once in a while, or poached eggs, quick poach, soft boiled eggs, and we should somewhat stop that. Or use an induction burner because the heat is not much. The maximum temperature goes to about 70 degrees centigrade. But scrambling and frying an egg goes up to 400 degrees. So that's when the eggs get bad. So these are my good fat things. Avocados, hugely wonderful. Nuts, Macadamia nuts has got more fat than, so many things. Cacao nibs,
Right.
full of fat, so much of wonderful fat, and all of them are monosaturated fats. None of the omega-6, they're all omega-9 fats. So macadamias, Brazilian nuts, and the pecans. Now, again, difficult to get, more expensive, but yes. A point I want to make about almonds. Almonds are the holy grail of Indian nuts. The truth is
Right.
that while they are good, they must be soaked in water to take all the muck out. But the pity is that about 60% of that is omega-6 oils. And 30% is the saturated oil, and only 10 is the monosaturated oil. So overdoing almonds is not such a great idea. Instead, walnuts, pistas, cashews, pine nuts are much better than that. Even though everybody, I mean, 100 patients I interview, everybody starts their day with a piece of nuts. So little word about nuts, get them from organic sites or sites which are actually, because most of them are covered with so much nonsense that they cause allergies, they cause inflammation, and they play a big role in autoimmune illnesses. So don't just, pick up a handful and swallow them. Find out where they're coming from.
Okay.
Little word about seeds.
Great.
Seeds are wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's been an absolute wealth of information that you've shared with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra. I want you to sum it all up for us, both you and Isha. If you could
Mhm.
answer just one question for me, what has been your biggest learning so far? What have you learned? अगर आपसे ये सवाल कोई अभी पूछे that what is it that you have learned? How would you encapsulate that?
I have learned that we all need to start living our lives for the jokes that they actually are. And I am hoping to get there. I'm hoping to find ways to let go and take myself less seriously, and understand that my soul and your soul and everyone's soul just came down here for a good time, and that's what we need to do. That has been my learning. That is currently how I feel.
Great, that's so spontaneous. I really appreciate that. And what about
Well,
you,
you
Dr.
asked me
Chopra?
a spontaneous question, and you said that you didn't want to pigeonhole it or define it. So
Yes, absolutely not, because that's when you get the best answers. They come straight from the heart and it's extremely enamoring.
This is
I
a good.
love your answer.
Well, my
Dr.
answer is,
Chopra.
although I'm sounding like a nutritionist, I'm not. I'm just passionate about food because I just feel it's the biggest pleasure in life, and it always will be. But I'm very connected with the universal energy, and I believe much more that the universal energy is part of us. And that is one big learning that emerged, and not from nutrition, but from just my going inwards, which is an essential part of it. So I don't want to, give the impression that I'm only preaching food. My aim, my life is like a pyramid, where we have to look after our structural integrity. One face of the pyramid is what goes in, what we breathe, eat, and drink. The other is our 5G radiation, EMF, and all the other nonsenses. And the crown of the pyramid is our mind, and that controls everything in our body. Because if we feel that we are the observable part of the giant universe, we are connected and we have a blueprint for healing. So we must connect with the universe anyhow we can, because anything that crosses our mind, any memory that we cling on to, every belief that we nurture, everything we do is actually translated into our cellular mechanisms, which then emerges an energy which we can read today, which we can read in our clinics. And that
Right.
forms a positive or a negative command, and all the emotions, behaviors, and the thoughts that cross our mind become part of us. And ultimately, the funny thing is that our uh, biography becomes our biology. And so if you don't, I understood it from that point of view, and once I understood that, I want to keep connected to the universe, because that is the only way my body and universe will be one. It sounds esoteric, but it's true.
No, I think it's beautiful and very, very succinct. You explained it so well. It's absolutely seamless. That's how, like, our intrinsic soul knits itself to the energy of nature and all that's around us, and we are a composite expression of that. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra, for taking out time for us. And Isha, it was fantastic having you on board. And
Thank
listening to you and your spontaneous answers,
We're happy to be here.
it's been, yes, absolutely. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. A very, very energizing talk. Thank you so much.